Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Guys, it's episode 14 of the Flixwatcher podcast. I'm Kobe.
I'm Helen.
On this episode, we'll be talking about What We Do in the Shadows, the Kiwi film directed by Taika Waititi and Jemaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords. Our guests this week are Helen from the Allusionist podcast and also Answer Me This, and Matthew Crosby from Pappy's Bangs and Mash and Pappy's Flatshare Slamdown. What We Do in the Shadows, it got 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb, and it got 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. Stay tuned, guys, of course, for the only score that matters, that is the Flixwatcher rating.
Like what you hear? Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. You can find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod and visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings about this particular show. As always, films reviewed in this podcast were available to stream on Netflix UK at the time of recording. There may be bad language and there may be spoilers. You have been warned. Welcome to this edition of Flixwatcher. Today we are joined by Helen and Matt. If you'd like to say hello, introduce yourselves and let us know where we can hear you.
I'm Helen Zaltzman and I make podcasts such as The Allusionist, which is about language, and Answer Me This, in which we answer questions from the audience on whatever is troubling them at that point in time.
And I'm Matthew Crosby. I'm a comedian and a writer, and I also make podcasts. Everyone makes podcasts these days, don't they?
Yeah, everyone here makes podcasts.
I mean, literally everyone here, yes. Yeah, that's very true. I make a podcast with my sketch team, Pappies. I make a podcast called Bangers and Mash, and you can find that at the British Comedy Guide. And also at the British Comedy Guide is our other podcast, which is a live panel show called Flatshare Slamdown.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Happy with those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Should we talk about the Illusionist and
the film adaptation thereof? That's happening a lot now,
You think
isn't
of
it?
The Informant.
And Answer Me, well, I would say I was doing a bit of research. The Sony award-winning Answer Me This.
10 years old, Answer Me This.
2007. So it's fair to say you were one of the first?
Well, at the
that you could
time we
claim that crown?
weren't, but it's all we've telescoped out now. The fun thing about the Sony Award that Answer Me This one, we've won a few awards, and then pretty much the year after we won an award, that award ceremony would shut down completely. So don't give us any awards now.
So the Sony Awards doesn't exist anymore?
No, it doesn't.
What is it now?
It went away for a few years, and now they just brought
Now
it
it's
back.
the Smash Hits Poll Winners Party, isn't it?
They brought it back, and it's called the Arias, which is an Australian Music Awards
Maybe.
as well.
Right.
So they fluffed that.
Yeah. Oh dear. Oh well, it's a shame.
all right.
But anyway, it's quite nice to be one of the final ever Sony Award-winning podcasts.
Sure.
In fact, the last ever Sony Award-winning podcast.
The last but one.
Oh, did you not win gold?
No, there was 1 year.
Oh,
1 year
sorry,
after.
sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's delayed by a year, so the effect is less obvious. But if you looked at it on a graph, it'd be very clear.
Yeah.
That it's Answer Me This plus a year, then curtains.
Then
You
it
were the
goes.
beginning of the end.
Yeah. Maybe they think, where do we go from here?
Yeah, absolutely. They peaked. They tried it one other year. Just didn't feel the same as when we're giving awards to Helen. Helen's now going to talk about the time when Flatshare Slamdown won the Loaded Laughter Awards.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Did you?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
We won the Loaded Laughter Award
What?
for Funniest Podcast, and I believe 2013? 2011, I think it was.
Is there a black tie ceremony for that?
It's amazing. It's really good fun because for some reason, I don't know why, loads of comedians show up. So like Vic and Bob were there, all the guys from The Fast Show were there, Keith Lemon was there, Lee Nelson. Got to meet all my heroes.
And then
First half of that list, not necessarily the second half.
And then did it die a death 2 years after?
I think the Loaded Laughter still exists.
Even though Loaded does not.
Does it not? Does it not?
And nor
Yeah,
does Laughter.
folded, yeah.
It's a very solid time now.
Well, when Loaded magazine folded, so did Laughter. Yeah. That was the day that Laughter died.
Oh, no.
No, I didn't know that Loaded magazine. This is terrible news for me.
I thought it did, didn't it?
I
I thought pretty much all the magazines have gone.
When I
Yeah,
turned
yeah.
17, I probably just stopped reading it.
You're so grown up.
You became a man, my son.
And then moved to FHM.
But not to miss you, I did do some research as well, and Pappy's is apparently Britain's best live sketch team.
Yes, you're reading from a press release that I wrote.
But it is also true.
But it's one of those things where my friend Steve Hall said you can just say anything in a press release, and then it's a bit like Wikipedia. If you say a thing in an interview, then the interview is the source. So if we say, this is yet another source proving that Pappy's are Britain's best live sketch team, we can now have you on our Wikipedia page quoted as. I mean, admittedly, it's me saying it still.
This is why Donald Trump is president now.
Absolutely.
This is the problem.
This is fake news.
Yeah, you started it.
Finish
it.
I began fake news.
God damn you, Matthew.
Do you have the power to finish Trump?
I'd like to think I do. Yeah. I mean, sure.
He's nearly a foot taller than you.
But it wouldn't be hand-to-hand combat,
It wouldn't?
Helen. No. It'd be a meeting of minds. It'd be a battle of wits,
Yeah, okay,
and I feel like
can
I
see
could
that
probably
working.
beat him there.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Look forward to it. I can't wait.
But on a different note, we're here to review some films.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to start with, your choice today. Would you like to give us a brief synopsis and tell us why you picked the film you've chosen?
I would like to do all of those things, and I will, beginning now. I picked the movie What We Do in the Shadows. Now, it is directed... Now, I'm not sure I've got the definitive pronunciation on him, but I'm going to go for it. Is it Taika Waititi?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's what we've been going for.
Waititi, yeah.
Taika Waititi.
Yeah. I think that's how I heard it said, but
Taika Waititi.
I think as long as you get all the kind of...
I've not only never heard it said, I assumed, because I knew of his work through Flight of the Conchords,
Yeah.
and I assumed he was like Flight of the Conchords, like dorky, unattractive mate who was like, oh, he's funny, but, we can't put him on screen. And then halfway through watching the film, I was like, who's the lead guy in this? He's really amazing. He's so funny and charismatic. And it is Taika Waititi. And I was like, no, not only are you a brilliant director, you're also A, good looking, and B, a really good and funny actor.
Absolutely.
So I immediately went off him. Straight away. No.
Well, now he's directing Thor, isn't he? So
I've heard. So
yeah.
Kobe was saying beforehand, he's about to direct Thor.
Are you guys Marvel fans?
No, I reached my...
Peak Marvel.
Yeah, I reached the end of my ability to tolerate Marvel some time ago.
But are you slightly interested in the fact that it's Taika Waititi directing Thor? Is that not...
Even that.
Even that's not enough to
Even
put
that,
you...
no.
Do you think he's going to give it a Waititi spin? Or do you think he's just going to do a conventional...
I really like those little videos he's been doing where Thor is a shit flatmate.
They are pretty good. I watched them because you alerted me to them, and they're quite funny where he's sort of in his board shorts.
So I admit, if the Thor film is more of that, then yes, all right, I will overcome the Marvel threshold
Okay.
that I had reached.
I'll let you know, because I'll probably watch
Thank
on the
you.
first day and then send you a message and say,
Yes,
yes.
that'd be very decent. But if it's just a 40-minute action sequence followed by another one, then I'm out.
Are you a massive geek then? Are you a big superhero geek?
I will watch anything that's Marvel, because I think they've got a lot to... I really enjoy it. DC I'm not so fussed about. It's too po-faced, a bit boring.
See, when I was a kid, I read DC comics. So I read Batman and Superman. I was I was around 14 when they did the big Death of Superman series. But it's not translated into movies at all, really, has it? No one. I mean, there've been some good Batman movies, but no one seems to be like everyone loves Marvel, but Marvel seems like too cartoony. Do you know what I mean? It's too sort of comic booky for me to really enjoy it.
Because I think everyone's generally happy with the Nolan Batman series.
Yeah.
I liked elements of them, but generally I didn't. I found them too pompous.
Yeah.
And also just a bit like they needed a bit of script pruning.
I don't know if you... But what I like about it is it's a pompous movie, but he's a bat.
He's not a bat. He's a yuppie.
He's a man who
one-percenter.
He's a man who dresses as a bat.
And then in the last film, he's a man who is convalescing and then has another setback and convalesces again.
I've not seen that last one, but it sounds really good. Is he a bad flatmate? Is it like those Thor things? So speaking of the Dark Knight, shadows are dark, and what we do in the shadows is the film we were supposed to be talking about. I got derailed.
As always happens, Marvel gets mentioned, and that's
and
it.
we get
Sucked
immediately derailed. I'm so sorry. So for those of you who have not seen the film, spoiler alert, it is about 85 minutes long. It is... So just... if you haven't checked the running time, I'm going to spoil that for you right now. It is about... Well, it starts basically as about 3, sort of 4 vampires living in New Zealand. And one of them sort of lives under the house and isn't really a character.
He's very old.
He's very old. He's
8,000
8,000 years old. The other 3 masquerade as kind of New Zealand hipsters in order to find virgins and drink their blood. And it's basically, it's in the tradition of Spinal Tap. It's a largely improvised mockumentary.
So is it improvised?
Apparently so, yeah. Apparently they shot 120 hours of footage.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And they did a few little tricks. Like there's a guy, Stu, who plays an IT guy who was like the most understated performance ever committed to film, because they didn't tell him he was going to be in the film that much. They didn't tell him he was a central character. They said, just you're in like one scene, even though clearly he must have realised when they shot about 80 scenes with him. It's like, you're only in one scene, so just don't bother trying too hard. You're only a sort of peripheral character, and then turns out to be kind of one of the big main characters. But yeah, so it's kind of an improvised comedy about these 3 grungy flatmates who happen to also be vampires. And there's a sort of plot, but it's sort of incidental, really. They're going to a party. Someone's ex-girlfriend's going to be there.
Yeah.
The Beast is going to be there. They make a new guy a vampire. Peter turns him into a vampire, and he can't. It's almost like he can't quite deal with the fame of it. He, that everyone says if you get famous, you get 18 months of being an arsehole. That's what they say. That's what
Tell us, Matthew.
I mean, I've never been famous, but I know people who are famous, and I think 18 months is a fair enough amount of time, and that's kind of what he does. He goes around showing off that he's a vampire, but generally, it's basically like a Flatshare movie.
It's like an advert for Spare Room or something.
It is, yeah, exactly. It's like a Spare Room advert. But
It reminded me a lot of when you and I used to share a flat, Matthew.
oh, absolutely.
Oh, did you guys share a flat together?
Yeah, for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I was largely nocturnal as well at the time.
That's true.
Constantly bringing virgins back, but they were just my mates.
A lot of dirty dishes.
A lot of dirty dishes, yeah. There's almost like a Withnail and I aspect to that pile of dirty dishes they've got there. And the reason I chose it is, well, A, because I wanted to see it. And
so you'd not seen it before?
No, I hadn't seen it before, and it felt like the sort of thing I would enjoy. And lo and behold, I did.
Good.
More on that later.
You really know yourself.
I really know myself.
That's good.
I know the sort of stuff I'd like. I'm a big fan of Flight the Conchords, and obviously Jemaine Clement is in it, and he's brilliant. And the other reason is, and I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but you wouldn't let me pick my first choice, which was Adam Sandler's The Cobbler, because
and thank you for not letting him pick that.
Vic, I thought we could have had a really nice chat about it. I haven't seen that either. I'm fascinated to see it. It's got like a 1.5 star rating on Netflix, and I think if anything that's got that kind of rating has got to be worth our time. But Helen, that was your
I didn't realise it was a serious suggestion.
I don't know if you can go back through the 25 emails we sent each other that day when I was like, if it's not that, then I'm picking Kevin James's Here Comes the Boom. But no, I genuinely would have liked to have seen that. But
in your own time, Matthew.
In my own time.
Don't take the 3 of us down with you.
Yeah, that's it, I think.
That's the problem. I wanted to share the pain of it.
I think there's a general kind of Adam Sandler and Friends veto zone around this podcast.
He does not deserve more chances from us.
No.
We have a limited life. We don't want to spend it on
that's
The Cobbler.
Absolutely true. And you didn't want to watch The Cobblers.
I'm okay
it's probably going to be redubbed. No, fair enough. But let's talk about
what
this.
In the shadows. Yeah. So what do you reckon, Helen?
I'd seen it before, and so I was very happy to watch it again. I really like how understated it is, in a way that a lot of Antipodean films and sitcoms are, where just it feels deliberately mundane.
Yeah.
And I think with this, it really works. The fact that you've got these vampires who are wearing frock coats and they have red velvet.
The dandish hipsters.
Yeah,
they are.
But also clock radios.
Yes.
And I liked as well, there was a little nod to Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Did you see that mid-90s film, which was very over the top? So the first time you see Jemaine Clement is when Taika Waititi's character opens his door, and Jemaine Clement's having this sex pile with women in red satin, which I think is something that happened in that film.
Well, apparently he based his character on the Gary Oldman character.
Really?
Yeah, that's it's sort of the same look, isn't it?
Yeah.
The long hair, the little soul patch, the moustache.
But Gary Oldman in that film had a sort of big heart-shaped head, didn't he?
Yeah, when he was old vampire, not when he was sexy vampire.
When he was sexy vampire with the purple shades, that's how you knew he was sexy.
I just remember him being sexy old vampire. I've elided the two.
But I found them. Yeah, I think you're right. It's understated, but in.
Reminding me of Father Ted almost, because you have
that
guys and a really old guy who's a temperamental person.
That actually really works, actually.
Yes, I think it's also that I'm not saying that priests are ridiculous, but they are slightly ridiculous. But I think both Graham Linehan and Arthur Matthews and Taika Waititi and Jemaine Clement sort of picked characters that you expect to behave in a certain way. Priests and vampires kind of, have got to be, I don't know, how would you say, they've got to be sort of stoic and they've got to be ominous. And when you take that away from them, it just becomes hilarious. I think it's very understated, but it's also very, very well observed. It did feel like the kind of the flats I've lived in, or the sort of arguments I've seen between flatmates.
We start at when the film opens, it starts with a flat meeting.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I liked how they used flat as a verb as well.
Yeah,
Those
flatting.
vampires will flat together.
And it's about the one guy, I guess Deacon, who's the youngest vampire at the time, who's not pulling his weight, and that's the conversation everyone's had. You talked about the with Nell and I pile of dishes.
He hasn't done the dishes for 5 years, and it's just racking up.
Yeah, and also you just get the sense that because they've been alive for such a long time, they're pretty bored at this point.
Yeah.
Just filling in the time is quite tiresome, and that I enjoyed. I liked as well that they touched upon the fact that if you had lived for as many years as a vampire has lived, you probably had some dodgy politics, because there was Deacon being in with the Nazis during the Hitler times.
Yeah, he was just a product of his times, but unfortunately his times have been the last 800 years.
Yeah, but then there were moments when it was quite scary as well, when there's Nick, someone they think is a virgin that they're trying to capture, and so he's trying to escape the house and vampires keep appearing.
That's quite dark, actually.
Yes, yeah, they managed to make it quite frightening.
Because I always think, when you said it's understated, but there were some parts where it was. I mean, there's some
pretty
wine work, for
gory,
example.
gory moments as well.
It had some
There's
genuine,
a lot of blood.
some genuine horror scares, and some really. When he accidentally, when he bites the girl and
hits the artery,
and it's just spraying everywhere, and he's trying to drink it like a Coke can, like a Coke can that's sort of split open. It's both really funny, but also like I was really retching watching it. Yeah,
there's a beautifully shot bit where the new vampire doesn't realise he can't eat solids anymore, and he eats a chip, and then he just vomits blood into the road, and it's dark and it's kind of backlit by a streetlight.
Yeah.
And there's just this. It's actually quite lovely looking, but also so horrible because it's someone puking in the street.
Helen S. What were your thoughts on What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh, I love it. It's
Had
great.
you seen it before?
I had, yeah. I saw it at the cinema, and I'd seen it when it first came onto Netflix as well. So, yeah, I've seen it a few
Did it
times.
stand up to a repeat? I think those kind of improvised comedies stand up to repeat viewings because so much of the comedy comes from little turns of phrase, or because I guess because it's often shot in the three shots, so you're watching all three of them together. They're all kind of doing their own thing, and you're sort of you could probably just watch one character, and that would. You'd get a different thing each time if you just sort of focused on Jemaine Clement or just on...
Like Mike Figgis' time code.
Absolutely, yeah. If you just cordoned off a bit of the screen and just watched the top corner. Yeah. I thought the guy playing Deacon was amazing, and I looked him up, and he's not really done anything.
Oh.
He's not his website is... I was in a movie. That's genuinely there's a big button on his website going, click on here to find out more about a movie I was in.
That's nice.
Which is lovely, yeah.
It's exciting to be in the movies.
He's not really done much apart from this, but he was amazingly funny. He was so good.
I would imagine there are not that many films being made in New Zealand.
Yes. I imagine the New Zealand comedy scene is fairly small as well, and they're all...
And it's all them.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's basically them.
Jemaine Clement and Flight of the Conchords and Rhys Darby.
Rhys Darby, yeah.
Lovely to have a bit of Rhys Darby in this film. I like the fact that they brought in werewolves. Like True Blood would bring in another different supernatural
race.
Yes, exactly. And they did that a bit, but in a more underplayed way. I like the line, "We're werewolves, not swearwolves."
Apparently they're doing, and again, there's a couple of spin-off movies apparently, I don't know either.
Really?
But one of them is going to be following the werewolves round, called We're Wolves. But I love that. It reminded me a bit of the scene in Anchorman when the two news teams meet.
Yeah.
And then there's a fight that kicks
exactly,
off.
yeah. But yeah, it's basically just young people hanging out and getting into trouble, isn't it?
And they just happen to be vampires.
Happen to be vampires and
they
werewolves.
happen to need human blood. And
Specifically Virgin's blood.
Virgin's the best blood, isn't it?
Yeah.
I liked how they explained that. I think it was Jemaine Clement saying, if you ate a sandwich, you would enjoy it more knowing no one had fucked it.
Yeah, it's full of stuff like that. Because, again,
it's very quotable. There's so many little bits in it that I think watching it again, you sort of almost join in. I know I found myself kind of joining in a little bit.
I think
in a quote along.
Yeah, the repeat viewing is supposed to be quite high in this. There's that nod to the Lost Boys where they had the biscotti. Look what you're eating. It's worms.
You see, now I've not seen the Lost Boys, so I know that. I mean, they mentioned that they're referencing the Lost Boys, but I don't know what the thing was in that. What happens in the Lost Boys?
I saw it when I was, I think, 7, so I can't remember.
I've seen one bit of the Lost Boys, which is a
Kiefer
guy
Sutherland
without a shirt playing the saxophone, which my friend showed me.
You should watch the Lost Boys because
Okay, I'm
is
writing it down.
Brilliant. But
The Lost Boys.
he's
writing
eating
it down.
something and makes it look like it's worms. So it is that simple.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's awesome. The soundtrack to that is pretty awesome as
Oh,
well.
I've heard the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I'm not a complete philistine, but I haven't seen the film. I'm not big up on my 80s movies, but
It surprises me.
yeah, I think people would assume I like that sort of stuff. But the
Yeah.
stuff I watch from the 80s is like Hal Hartley movies and stuff that make me seem clever, you know. But I haven't seen the Lost Boys. But I would love to, because again, I keep mentioning Spinal Tap, but it was shot in the same way.
Yeah.
I would love to see. I bet you they've got some phenomenal outtakes.
Mm.
You know, Spinal Tap basically, when they put out the DVD a few years ago, had a whole other disc that was another movie that was all the same characters, completely different sort of story. I bet you could do the same thing. I think the plot emerged as they were shooting it. They just started shooting it. It's funny because it's a way of like a lot of great comedies come out of improvisation. So many of the Judd Apatow, Adam McKay. Is it Adam McKay?
Yeah, Adam McKay did Anchorman.
Yeah, exactly. A load of them came out of, big, long improvised scenes. It's just interesting. It doesn't seem to happen that often.
Well, the difference with Judd Apatow and Adam McKay is that they kind of sit in the improvised scene for far too long, and their films like 2.5 hours when they just don't need to be.
Yeah.
And you
85 minutes.
85 minutes.
Loved it.
That's what you need to do. Just cut it short, make it really.
I do like a short film. It's good.
There's something very satisfying about knowing that the film's going to be over soon. And I know that makes it seem like I don't enjoy films. I do.
I like to know how long I've got to enjoy them for, though.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's just like if you're watching a YouTube video, there's going to be a point when you bring the cursor over the screen and see how much more there is to be seen, no matter how much you're enjoying it.
And that's what you can do with Netflix as well. Just kind of
do it with Netflix, yeah. But I think especially with comedies, I find it very, very hard to justify a comedy that's over 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this...
I think also if this was over 90 minutes, it would probably have to have a more conventional plot arc. And I was quite glad that it didn't, where it was portraying the vampire's life and there was a bit of development as well, but that you were just watching it, you weren't really watching it to see a narrative unfurl.
You're just watching it to see them hang out with each other.
Yeah, but I think that is often when the weaknesses show up in comedy things, when they go on too long and they're sort of forced into some kind of narrative.
Yeah, it doesn't really have the same sort of third act problems that a lot of comedy films have when they're like, we've got to tie this story up, because it's a bit like it's sort of train tracks, isn't it? Where you're laying down the train tracks as the movie's going along.
Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Wallace and Gromit style plot. I've realised who he looks like, not just Gary Oldman. We've got him up on the screen here.
You've got to describe who you're
We're talking about Jemaine Clement's character, Vladislav.
Everyone I know fancies Jemaine Clement.
Vladislav the Poker.
Vladislav the Poker, that's right. He looks like, in Deadwood, Lovejoy's character in Deadwood.
Doesn't look
Al
like
Swearingen.
Al Swearingen, yeah.
Does look like a young Ian McShane.
Yeah.
He could, if they're going to do like a Deadwood reboot, that's who I would go for.
Jemaine Clement follows the Allusionist on Twitter, therefore he's probably a great guy.
I think he is a great
I
guy.
think he is.
So you're saying everyone fancies Jemaine Clement? That's interesting to me.
Do you fancy Jemaine Clement?
I do fancy him, yeah. But then I also fancy Brett McKenzie, and now...
Gorgeous
Now
man.
he's got an Oscar.
Well, this is I fancy him even more, but now I also fancy Taika Waititi as well. So I don't think I can watch any more of these movies.
What about Rhys Darby? You just like famous Kiwi comedians.
It's more of a friend zone thing, I think.
Rhys Darby came on our podcast once.
Did he?
So yes, Flatshare Slamdown. He did one of the Flatshare Slamdowns in Edinburgh. If you want to listen to it, it's a British Comedy Guide. It's still there.
We'll link to it in the show notes.
Absolutely. But so it's weird. It'd be weirder if I was like, yeah, I do, because I'm sort of betting. But yeah, the Flight of the Conchords guys, sexy, talented. They're like the anti-Pappies.
Well, this is a question I have for you guys. Do you think, because New Zealand is a tiny country, and although they're not that prolific in films, the recent films they've put out there, Hunt for the Wilder People being the latest one, are really good, high quality, fun films. But the UK doesn't seem to do that with their films. Is there something missing? Is there something that Pappies can do?
Yeah, Matthew, why haven't you fixed the UK films?
Why haven't I fixed the UK film industry?
You could be the new Richard Curtis.
I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that. It's a good point, isn't it? I mean,
do you think that's just our perspective because we're here, so we see
get the
good
stuff.
and the bad ones? Whereas if you're like, we only hear about the good New Zealand films.
I mean, bear in mind we have only mentioned films that Taika Waititi's made as well,
True.
so it might just be that he's a very good director, and it's irrespective of the fact
They've got Peter Jackson as well.
They've got Peter Jackson, but he sort of works with the Hollywood system, doesn't he? Whereas Taika Waititi is still a New Zealand filmmaker. Although Peter Jackson's early stuff, I love. Bad Taste. Have you seen Bad Taste? His
Heavenly
first movie.
Creatures, his second film, though, isn't it? And that's
I think he did
amazing.
Brain Dead, then he did Heavenly
right.
Creatures. So he did a couple of like really schlocky, but Bad Taste is amazing. He's the star of it as well. He's like the main character in it.
Yeah, you're a fan of Bad Taste, aren't you?
I've seen all of the Peter Jackson early films. I mean, Brain Dead, I think, is quite a big influence on this.
It's
a little
definitely
bit in
very similar,
the tone, yeah. But Bad Taste is a lot of fun. Yeah. And Heavenly Creatures is very beautiful.
Yeah. But also, I was surprised when I went back and watched Heavenly Creatures, having seen some of Lord of the Rings, that it prefigured that because there are all the sort of fantasy sequences in it.
Oh, right. I've never seen that. That's the one. Is that Kate Winslet one?
It is, yeah.
First Kate
really
Winslet,
good.
Melanie Linsky. It's terrific.
It's based on a true story as well, isn't it?
It is.
Of
two schoolgirls
who
who
kill their
murder one of
parents.
their mothers.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds...
It's very dull, but very beautiful.
He also did Meet the Feebles as well. Do you remember that?
He did,
Which is like a sort of weird...
Muppets.
Like a backstage at the Muppets, but they're all shagging each other. Puppet swearing, basically.
I've not come across this. Have you, Cody?
No, not at all. Not at all. Are you a Peter Jackson completist?
I don't know, because I've not seen The Hobbit.
Oh, so no, yeah.
Are you considering it non-canonical for your own convenience?
Yeah,
Have you seen The Lovely Bones, though? That is
I
one
have
of the
seen that, yeah.
worst films I've ever seen in my life.
Book's not great,
The
though.
book's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
The book's awful, and
It's
I
just
didn't
not
sort of
a nice...
realise...
It's not a nice
There's
book.
nothing nice about
Not a
it,
nice
and it's
premise,
called
is
The
it?
Lovely Bones, and it's
Nothing wrong with the bones.
Also, there's a
it's
weird...
a weird heaven thing, and
I think the
Mark
book shows
Wahlberg, and it's
Well, Mark Wahlberg's not in the book, to be fair, which is a bonus. But I read the book because I was working with a woman and she was like, I stayed up all night to read this, you have to read this. So I stayed up the next night to read it. And I thought at the beginning, I was like, this is very promising. And then it just sort of flatlined and then just plummeted.
There's also a terrible,
weird.
sex scene.
Yes.
Where, like, she possesses
Her school friend.
her school friend, but they're all still a bit too young to be having sex.
and
even
her
if-
sister's like
even
having
if you're
sex
dead.
at 12 under a boat. And,
Yeah. So,
It's by the by, Peter Jackson. So the film is. I've not watched the film.
so basically, what we've
You
established
say no.
is
No, say no to the film.
yeah.
Lovely Bones.
I mean, if you've already done the book, then you really don't need to do the film.
okay, because the film also has Marky Mark, and I'm happier without Marky Mark.
you prefer him with the Funky Bunch, don't you? If Marky Mark's going to be involved, the Funky Bunch have to also be there. The other New Zealand film I can think of that isn't a Taika Waititi one is Whale Rider. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
that was.
Eagle versus Shark.
That's Taika Waititi.
Oh,
is it?
Yeah. So you see, that's
Yeah,
the
so
problem.
this is
You go
it.
like-
It
you
Gets
go
a
like,
bit narrow.
Don't they make great movies? And what you mean is this one dude who is good looking and funny makes really great movies.
And Jemaine Clement's in all of
And
them.
Jemaine Clement's in all of them. Yeah.
Because everyone loves Jemaine Clement.
Who doesn't?
The only one I can think of is Once Were Warriors.
Oh yeah, wasn't the piano New Zealand film
Yes,
as well?
yeah.
Jane
Yeah.
Campion is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And female as well. So we go. So they've made a few, but rather sporadically, and then
I bet you they're making films all the time. We just
Yeah,
don't see them.
exactly.
We just don't see them. Any New Zealand listeners? Do you have news? I'm sure you do. New Zealand listeners.
We have
I would hope so.
a lady, yes, she's now based in Auckland. She used to be based in London. She listens. We talked about Hunt for the Wilder People when it came out.
Well, can you please tweet us and tell us, is the New Zealand film industry in rude health, or is it dying on its arse like we clearly think it is?
Well, they've got Thor. Thor's
They've
one of
got
theirs
Thor's
now.
got- yeah.
Does
Thor's
that count?
Yeah.
Is he going to make it in New Zealand?
I think he's been. It might be making it in Australia.
I think it's
but-
Australian made, yeah.
But
same
it's
difference.
close. It's close.
Same difference, right?
The point is, it's not being made in Hollywood. So
Yeah.
that's a
kinda
score
counts.
for Australia and New Zealand collectively, if they'll share that glory.
So what did he do before he made Flight of the Conchords? How did he know those guys? What was the
Taika
Taika
Waititi.
Waititi.
Taika Waititi?
I
yeah.
think because Flight of the Conchords was kind of going in. It was just Jermaine and Brett, wasn't it? And they were
Yes.
just kind of hanging around with each other. And Taika was making films. The first film he actually wanted to make was Hunt for the Wilder People, which is
Wow.
what came out last year.
That's amazing.
And
That's the long
he
game.
started doing. He made Eagle vs Shark and just got all his mates involved. So he's just been one of these people just got a camera and started making films and seeing what happens, and things like that.
I've just realised that I've seen every Taika Waititi film I've seen has been on a plane. So maybe I'm really doing them a disservice. Maybe they're not meant to be seen on the 9-inch screen.
Can I just say it made you recording this podcast very expensive because you had to buy a plane ticket as well. You didn't just have
the
to.
only way I will watch them.
And it wasn't a cheap plane because now EasyJet and those guys don't
have films.
Don't have films on
Well,
it.
Helen flew to New Zealand. Now she went really method on it.
I refused to get out the plane. I just went to the films.
Back to the film, yeah. So
Yes. I remember.
we digress.
I saw Flight of the Conchords pretty early on in their career because they I was in Edinburgh at the Fringe in 2002, and every night all the comedians I knew would go down to this gig, and they were like, they're just these guys, and like none of them knew who they were, but after midnight everyone would go down to their venue, which was like a cellar. It was like really dripping wet arches, the Gilded Balloon arches. What are they supposed to be? The caves? Is that like
caves,
a railway
yeah.
arch?
Yes, yeah.
So like dank, like properly dank, small.
You kind of have to sit with
Or
your.
is it the underbelly?
Might be now. They might have.
Okay.
They might have changed hands.
Yes, the Gilded Balloon. I think some of that even burnt down, but yeah. I think Just the Tonic look after the caves now.
But anyway, imagine you're under a railway arch,
basically
and it's gross, and then there are these two guys in there with amazing patter that is very downplayed, like in these films, and playing these songs that are really funny. And I think some of those songs didn't make it into their TV show, but it was just really fun. And every night we would go because every night it was a bit different. And I was like, how do they do
this?
it?
Yeah.
And I remember someone going to see it, and they were like, they seem, because they're so downplayed and so natural. My friend saw it and was like, I don't, like, the songs are really funny, but I don't know if they're in on the joke of how funny the two of them talking is, because it just seems like two guys having a chat who, like, they almost kind of, it's like what we do in the shadows. They made a feature of kind of how boring and mundane they could be.
Yeah.
Well, I heard an interview with James Bobbitt, who's the guy who directed, I think he directed the first Muppet film.
Right, yeah.
He was the guy that brought in Brett McKenzie.
Yes.
And I think he did some work with Flight of the Conchords as well. And he said the first time he saw those guys live, he thought the patter was kind of just New Zealand kind of drawl, but he realised when working with them, they'd actually put in all the pauses and all the ums and ahs, and they'd really kind of tailored that kind of aspect.
Really?
Yeah, so he said the whole thing kind of put together was just magnificent. So
it's a bit like when people watch The Office, the British Office, people assume that's improvised in the same, because it's in that sort of mockumentary style.
Yeah.
People assume it's improvised, and then you read the scripts and you're like, no, actually every single line is poured over. I guess there's two ways of doing it. You either go the Office route of being meticulous about every single word, or you shoot for 120 hours and go, well, hopefully we get a funny 85 minutes out of this.
That is a bad proportion, isn't it?
No, but I bet you,
1%.
It depends, because they shot it with the New Zealand documentary company, so I assume they
was that real though? I didn't.
Yeah, because it was made in conjunction with them, so I assume they just kind of had a documentary team, and then presumably your costs aren't quite as expensive because you're not shooting it like a Hollywood movie, so it means that you can shoot dirty and you don't have to set up shots in quite the same way because you're just trying to capture what's happening. So I mean, I'm not saying
a lot of night shoots.
A lot of night shoots.
Well, it has to be.
Yeah.
Well, that's the start of the film as well. He opens the curtains.
This is the scariest part. This is the scariest part. He's, oh my God. I was so charmed by him as well. I was so gutted when I found out he was the director.
He's got a particular face that he pulls with his teeth, which
yeah, he does that like slightly sheepish kind of.
But sometimes this sort of excitement, like when he's about to eat somebody, and he's sort of.
Yeah, well, he's got the lady on the couch, and in the meeting beforehand, he says, if we're going to have the ladies in the couch, we need to lay down the newspaper. So he's there like laying all these towels down. How was your day? Oh, good, nice. And then
he's having a really polite conversation, which is actually, it's both kind of very funny, but again quite horrible.
Super dark, yeah.
Because he's about to murder her. It was those scenes I think were. It's very hard to pull off making your characters murderers, but also incredibly lovable.
Yeah, and just normal.
Well,
There's no glamour in it. It's not Interview with the Vampire or anything where you're like, oh, uncomfortable in being a murderer, but not.
There's nothing sexy about them. Even Deacon's erotic dance, he does, which I love. That when Nick comes round and knocks on the window, Deacon's, I'm doing an erotic dance for my friends. I just like the idea that's the way they spend. Yeah. They've done everything.
And it's that thing with Nick as well. When he becomes a vampire, it's like Nick's a dick.
Yeah.
I love it when they had scenes that were just filmed out on the town. It really reminded me of watching Ibiza Uncovered or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally like that. It feels like, I mean, I assume they just went out with them on nights out and had a stack of release forms. It's just like, you've just it's almost like what Scarlett Johansson did for Under the Skin.
Yeah.
Just driving around and seeing what happens. I wonder how I guess the reason Hollywood doesn't do that sort of thing is that you just can't. What do you do? What do you do when you go into a pitch meeting and go, I've got these funny mates. They're just really good. You should see them. They're really funny. Just let us film them.
Yeah, I think this kind of film, you just have to get on with it and then then release it, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And suddenly you find you're doing Thor.
Should we go into the score? Have we anything else to chat about and the general vibe of the film? I think everyone's quite positive about it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. It's tricky. I feel
Do you
like...
think you would have enjoyed the Cobbler more?
I feel like we could have had a better argument about the Cobbler, because I think I've got and again, I know we've gone back to the Cobbler again, but I've got a real soft spot for Adam Sandler. I think he is a naturally funny person, and I know
that's the point, though. He's letting himself down.
See, this is exactly the kind of discussion I wanted to have. Whereas,
and you brought it in there.
Whereas
Anyway.
Jemaine Clement, also a naturally funny person, but has sort of the material and the people around him to match. I think it's quite. Adam Sandler feels like he's lost in his own films.
He's not an underdog, Adam Sandler. He's still one of the highest paid
Oh
people
no,
in
I
entertainment.
don't think he's an underdog at all. But I find watching him absolutely delightful.
Okay.
It's sort of the dream, isn't it?
No.
That's an opinion that's not shared with the rest of this table.
Not. I mean, you actually like some of his films, though.
Yeah, I do. I think.
Well, some of them are alright.
And actually, the film Funny People, talking about Judd Apatow, the Funny People, which is Adam Sandler and Seth Rogen. I think it's actually I think there's a really good film in there with Adam Sandler, but it's 2.5 hours long as a comedy. So guys, just wind it in a bit. And
It's that's the problem with Judd Apatow movies.
Judd Apatow and his funny mates. That's what happens when you go in Hollywood. I've got some funny mates.
That's right, actually, yeah.
This is 40 minutes too long.
Yeah, that was odd, because I was watching that idly and I was like, I'm pretty ready for it to finish now. Oh, it's only the third act out of 5.
Yeah, and again, the plot isn't important.
No,
and
I
also
checked Wikipedia and it wasn't.
He cares so much about funny cameos from musicians that he really like. There's a big long James Taylor thing, and anyway. But here's one for you though on Adam Sandler before we get to the scores, because I do want to do these scores. Have you seen Punch Drunk Love? Because that's tricky for someone who's into credible movies. Paul Thomas Anderson. It's an arty type movie.
I have seen it, but I haven't seen it for a while. I can't remember hating it, and
that is the one that people pull out of the bag
like
for
it.
Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
It's the last ditch attempt of the desperate, is what you're saying, Kobe.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
It is, and that's only 90 minutes long.
I know I have seen it,
For
but
Paul Thomas Anderson as
when
well.
it came out,
Yeah, same. I don't remember much about it. I remember not really getting on with it.
yeah, not really needing to go back to revisit that one. Whereas the other ones, like obviously Magnolia.
I've
I
seen
thought you
a lot
meant
of
the other Adam Sandler movies.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, The Waterboy, I've watched it 17 times.
I've seen enough films where the main plot is the discontentment of a white guy.
He's just a man-child, isn't he?
Well, actually, that's very interesting you bring that up. Going back to what we do in the shadows, this was my one frustration with it, was that, and I appreciate it's New Zealand, but it did seem like they'd got these 3, possibly 4 very funny central characters, and then they just kept introducing more men. Like that's if I had to put any criticism,
the one lady was there to service
slave.
Yeah.
Or the beast.
Yeah,
or the beast. Yeah, it did seem like they brought in Nick, and you're like, oh, there's Nick, and then they brought in Stu, and there's Stu as well. It just seemed like they were constantly bringing in more and more guys.
Is that meant to show that these are sort of child men who are not really capable of interacting like adults, even though they're hundreds of years old?
I think it absolutely was. But
is it just because all their funny mates are
all
male?
their funny mates are blokes? Yeah.
Oh.
It was quite good. The family got her. She became a vampire at the end, and then she's there with her husband.
Yeah, that was
Spoiler.
great. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Well, this is all spoilerful, isn't it?
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouthwatering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Going to the scores.
Yes.
So the first score we talk about is the recommendability score. These are all out of 5. How much would you recommend this to other people to watch?
Scoring it out of 10. I said 10, so I'll cut that down to 5.
Yeah, just do the maths.
Yeah, I would recommend it because it is brief, first of all, so you don't feel like you're taking too much people's time, and it pays off pretty well. I tend to not like vampire stuff, and I liked this, so I reckon it would work for a lot of people.
So out of 5, what does that translate to?
That's translated to 5 out of 5. I wasn't scoring it 10 out of 14. Not that arbitrary, just because I ignored the fact that you said score it out of 5 when you wrote that down.
I literally didn't see that either, so all my scores are out of 10, but I'm doing the mental calibrations.
You're so brave.
Oh.
Thanks very much. I'm going to give that then a 4.2.
Oh. What happened to the 0.8?
No, I think it's definitely the sort of movie that I would recommend to a bunch of people, but I can totally see somebody watching it and going, it's not, like it's that very
Why is this
kind
funny?
of, yes,
Yeah.
and I'm picturing a specific person. Hello, if you're listening.
Who is it?
Alex, but not your Alex.
No, which?
My Alex.
Your Alex.
But I can imagine him watching it and going, yeah, that's where the gags. And I like, you could then go, oh, here are the gags. But it's so if you love out and out comedies, I'm talking Billy Madison. I'm talking Happy Gilmore.
No.
I'm talking The Wedding Singer. I'm talking Little Nicky. If you like a proper comedy,
I'll allow The Wedding Singer.
then
Yeah, I was going to say Wedding Singer is acceptable.
that's all I wanted, was for you to say one Adam Sandler movie was acceptable.
He peaked too early.
I feel he did. No, he continues to peak. He's
You can't
plateauing.
peak.
Climaxing.
He's
Still
plateauing.
climaxing.
You can't peak at sea level.
You can't, that's the first rule of the Sailor's Code, isn't it? But yes, I'll go 4.2.
4.2. Helen S.
5.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be anyone who hasn't seen this film. It's funny, it's silly, really short. It kind of... There has been a little bit of a foray into comedy and horror together. And when it works, it can be really good. And I think this kind of brings together the really kind of gory elements of horror that some people might not be agreeable with. But the way it's done, in the style that it's done, you can kind of like go, I don't really like it. But
Going back to that
it's
chase
kind
with
of
Stu,
fun.
that was quite tense. But then you have Jemaine Clement face on the cat.
Yeah. It's moments of there's sort of genuine jumps,
Yeah.
but also moments of real big comedy. I can turn myself into a cat. It's like Shaun of the Dead in that respect, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like the horror is done. It's done with a love of the genre. Like they clearly they're not taking the piss out of vampire movies so much as they see how ridiculous they can be. But yeah, I totally agree.
When you talk about Shaun of the Dead, actually, those guys, the Cornetto trilogy guys, are probably that kind of ilk in terms of making films in the UK that have independence and they've got class and they've got
Yes,
good
totally.
kind of quality about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, they use the same sort of pool of people in,
that
in all their films. Yeah.
But still want a Pappy's movie. That's what I'm alluding to.
I mean, you are in a very, very small pool of people who are requesting for that at the moment.
Two on this
Yeah.
side.
Two people. It'll be.
It depends if it's going to have
Well,
Adam
this is-
Sandler in it, really.
Yeah, that's
I think if Adam Sandler's in it, it becomes an Adam Sandler movie. You can't call it a Pappy's movie anymore.
more people wanted
But,
this than that Adam Sandler series on Netflix that got everyone angry about its portrayal of Native Americans.
That was Ridiculous 6, which is I watched 20 minutes of.
Well done.
Yeah, I know.
I think you need a medal or something for that.
Unless you watched it for your own enjoyment, in which case you should have
I
known.
watched it to test myself.
You've got it. It's a bit like in Mean Streets when he like puts his hand over the flame.
Yeah,
It's that sort of
it was
thing.
that
It's
kind of
like
thing,
just
isn't
to build, to make you stronger, to develop those critical faculties,
Absolutely.
to make sure you're not getting lazy.
Puts me in
and
the top
complacent.
5% I read on Wikipedia. I'm going to give, I think 4.9, because I think there are people, like you said, there'll be the odd person who's just like, why am I watching this? But for everyone else, they'll just get it and just be enveloped by it.
On Netflix, it would be recommended under that because you watched quirky comedies.
Yeah.
It's like that, isn't it? It's like that sort of thing where you go, it's definitely funny. It's full of big laughs, but I could totally see somebody watching it and going, that's not what I think a comedy is.
But if you've scored it 4.9 out of 5, that means 1 in 50 people won't get it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair kind of thing.
That
Yeah.
seems fair enough.
Repeat viewing score.
A personal repeat viewing score 5. I genuinely would have watched it again straight away afterwards. I found it brilliant. I could watch that guy who plays Deacon in anything, which is not great for him. He's done one thing. He's my favourite character. I think he's so funny. I think the idea of a non-sexy guy finding himself. People who find themselves sexy just makes me laugh, and he's wonderful. So I definitely, just purely for his performance alone, 5.
He has got a lot of good moments, actually. Right from the start, it's
He's got a good wardrobe.
Yeah, but you think I'm cool, right? That's not the point.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
he has the amazing hand-knitted jumper.
Yes.
Oh,
And it's just, for half the film, he's just
He's always
knitting.
knitting, yeah.
yeah,
God,
hipster.
yeah.
He's
So
like the rock star vampire, isn't he?
Yeah,
He is, yeah.
the young one who doesn't...
Yeah, he's the young one as well. He looks...
He's like 189 years old.
Yeah, but he also looks like he's 40, you know? Like, he's not like a young-looking, you know, like... if he was hanging out with a bunch of 17-year-olds, it looked really weird, but he's like the cool guy,
Yeah, but Jemaine Clement was supposed to have been vampired at 16. And he's
That's right.
But
40 when he's playing this.
So it was, we had a very tough 16 years. That's why I look like this. Yeah.
That is, it's slightly more plausible than Matt Damon playing an 18-year-old in Beyond the Candelabra.
Yes.
Is
That's
that
true.
how old it's supposed to be, isn't it?
Yeah, which
Oh.
really changed the dynamic of the film for me.
Yeah, that makes it a bit more...
Could they have not found someone who was 18?
I'm sure they could have found someone who was would at least pass ratings. Matt Damon
Someone
was 40-ish.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he passes for late 20s pretty well, but it does change the dynamic, the fact that he's not just passed out of childhood.
No.
Anyway, that's not this film.
It's
So-
very much the James Van Der Beek playing a 15-year-old in Dawson's Creek. It's very much like that.
Little bit, except I think it's more of a plot hole in
Right.
this film
Sure.
than in Dawson's Creek, which
Sure.
I think manages to get around that. How old was James Van Der Beek when he played Dawson?
47.
Looking good on it.
Repeat your score, Helen.
I didn't enjoy it quite as much the second time around, but I think maybe because I was watching critically for our purposes,
Oh, really?
rather than just watching to
We
discover what it
noticed
is.
you have your iPad mini in front of you. Were you typing notes on that at the time, or was that... Have you transposed them from...
I was typing on my laptop, and then it's in a Google Doc, so it's like, we're getting technical here.
Sure.
It's just updated on both
Talk us through your
devices.
process, Helen. What gear are you using at the moment?
But there's loads of detail, so I think over my lifetime, I could watch it several more times. So I would say it... Are we scoring this per number of repeat views we could do, or just on the repeat viewing quality?
The repeat viewing quality, I guess.
Okay, yeah, well,
I know
that's
kind of how you feel,
Yeah.
whether you think you're going to watch it again
yes.
in the next year or so, maybe.
4. I'm giving it a 4.
So you said 5, Matt, didn't you?
Yes, please.
Helen, S.
I'm going to go for a 5.
You've already lived it.
This is it. I want to watch it again now we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I just think it's really easy to watch, and it's also a kind of film that I could probably watch having missed the first 20 minutes
Yes.
and watch again sort of not knowing I'm going to catch the end of it and still really enjoy it, and probably find that there's little bits that I missed or that I forgot they happened. Like I forgot about the bit where Jemaine turns into the cat, which is completely ridiculous, and now it's in my head and I like cats. So yeah, 5.
That's so
much
true, though,
fun.
because I watched the second half of it with my wife. She was working, and then she got in and she just started watching it. I hadn't seen the first half, and it's so immediately funny, and the dynamic is so immediately clear that you don't need to have
Yeah.
seen the whole film.
It's like watching sketches.
It is. It's very sketchy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very sort of. It's almost like a sketch comedy movie. Yeah.
What about your repeat viewing score?
My repeat viewing score is, I'd say 5. I think I'd happily watch this a couple of times a year. Simple to watch, always put a smile on your face, and there's just so many bits. Like you say, I forgot about them playing with the bow and arrow, trying to get the bow and arrow into the dartboard and hitting him in the thigh. I forgot about the kicking in the taekwondo, like flying through the air. There's just so many like little...
That's one thing that they do really well and really simply is the simple special effect of them being able to fly up.
Yeah.
When they're having a fight all round each sort of level
Yeah,
of
that was
but
quite lovely.
That was like Inception, wasn't it?
Yes.
At some point.
Yeah.
Inception. Sorry, I didn't explain what I was. I realised doing this with my hands is of no use to the at-home listener.
I'll describe it. You know how in the late 90s, early noughts, boy bands would often do videos where they were like in a cuboid, which would slowly rotate so it looked like they were kind of
I think
dancing on the wall, but
the
they weren't.
pinnacle. The pinnacle is Lionel Richie's dancing on the ceiling.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Although
Are you thinking Jamiroquai?
I'm
Maybe?
You're thinking of
like
Virtual Insanity
No,
or-
no, that's Slidey Floors.
It's not Slidey Floors.
It's like NSYNC in
Well,
space or
I'm
something
thinking
like that.
NSYNC.
Yeah.
Okay.
NSYNC in
Of course,
space.
thank you,
Yes.
Helen. She knows.
There's a really good video on how that Virtual Insanity thing was made, but it's like a fixed camera and they
Yes,
move
they move the walls.
move the walls. That's
Yeah.
right.
But they
yeah.
don't rotate the walls.
No, you're right. And actually, it's not really got anything to do with
Why
what we
did
do
you
in
have
the
to bring up
shadows.
Jamiroquai again
I
every
think that was
time?
me. Yeah, sorry.
But yes, it's that's a very simple special effect done brilliantly.
Yeah.
It looks really, really good and never takes away. You're never watching the special effect. It doesn't take away from the comedy or from the performance.
I mean, it's also as personal. I like to think that there are actually vampires in New Zealand living their lives like that. I mean,
Yeah, could well.
be. Yeah.
Just
Don't
needs-
be charmed by a hipster.
A dandy hipster.
A dandy hipster on the town.
But it is weird that all of the core vampires in this film at the start, before they create some more, are Eastern European and German,
Yeah.
It's a good accent to be able to do, though, isn't
I
it?
suppose.
With a hint of New Zealand's coming through because they've assimilated.
Small screen score. So this is how relevant do you think it is to watching on Netflix? Do you feel the need to watch it in the cinema? Do you think you've missed out from not watching it in the cinema?
Well, I couldn't say because I first watched it on a plane, so that's about as bad a screen as you can get. And if I was missing stuff I didn't know, I watched it on my fairly large television today and was happy with it. So I think it translates to small, but I don't think you want to watch it on the smallest screen because there is a lot of visual detail in many of the frames.
Yeah.
And shame to miss some of that.
So how's that translate out of 5?
I'd say 4.5.
Okay.
But treat yourself to something that is not your phone.
Yeah, I'd say watching anything on a phone is pretty tricky, isn't it? There's not much that you really want to.
Might as well just listen to it at that point.
Yeah. I don't know if. Yeah, I think maybe like 4.6 or 7. It's like it's not really about the visual spectacle. It's about the. Yeah, let's go with 4.7. Like it's about the comedy performances, and I watched it on my laptop. It was great. Yeah.
I go 4.5. I did see this at the cinema, and it was quite nice to have that shared comedy moment, which...
That's true, though.
If you're obviously watching at home alone, then it's not as fun. So I would probably say, if you haven't seen this yet, maybe find someone to watch it with.
Lovely.
And have a lovely romantic night in watching this wonderful
That's a different
documentary.
question, though.
Yeah.
Is
You've
it
already
better
had
to...
the recommendability
Wait,
question, Helen.
hang on a second. That's a different question. Is it better to watch it on your own in your sad old flat with none of your mates,
On your phone.
or with loads of mates around? It would obviously be better with mates around, wouldn't it? Isn't that true of all
Most comedy films, certainly.
things?
Not all films, but I think that I'm just saying that it doesn't get a 5 because it does... For me,
suffers.
it did have a benefit of watching it the first time round as a shared experience.
Got it.
And then subsequently with a smaller crowd and on a smaller screen.
What do you think is a good film? This is just a tangential question. A good film to watch on your own?
Shame.
Oh, I'll tell you a story about
Is that the
that's the
Steve McQueen film?
movie
Yeah,
about
okay.
Michael Fassbender and his sex addiction and his
Yeah.
slightly uncomfortable
I watched that
relationship
with
with his sister.
my then girlfriend, now wife. I'm surprised we're still together. Well, we loved it. But it's not a date film, is it?
Well, I watched it on New Year's Day in Paris, having got engaged at midnight the night before. We got up and we were like, let's just walk down the Boulevard Saint-Germain and do something, and didn't realise that New Year's Day in Paris, basically everything shuts. There's nothing's open. So there's one cinema that was showing British films, and they were like, what's starting now? And they're like, this film Shame. I was like, yeah, I can't want to see that. We watched that. I mean, that the marriage could have almost been over before it began. It's definitely not a date movie, but it's not the first movie you watch just after getting engaged.
No.
And yet it was.
Yep, we then
And yes,
hired a hotel room high above the city, glass windows, and had a really wonderful time.
I think 4. I would like to see this in the cinema, not because of the visuals, but I think it's a good fun film to watch with other people. Mm-hmm. So this is.
But your living room would suffice,
My
right?
living room would suffice. That's why it's 4.5. But if it was, and I love the Prince Charles Cinema for these kind of films that they pull out like that.
Totally, yeah.
So if I was walking by the Prince Charles and had some time to kill and this was on, I'd definitely go in and watch it with an amassed audience. So yeah, 4.5 I think. So engagement score. How engaged were you whilst watching the film? Did you feel the need to?
I hope
stick
all
with
the
it?
sort of announcements that you had to listen to had already gone, so you didn't have to not listen to the emergency things.
I saved it for mid-flight because then they don't interrupt and pause the film much. So that's when I watch the films that I care about. I would say, so the criterion you put on the engagement score is how difficult would it be for you to turn off the film once you started watching it? And I don't think it's a criticism that I would also be quite happy watching it episodically.
Yeah.
So 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah, and I think also with the engagement is like how likely, to start looking at your phone or sort of get a bit distracted.
I suppose maybe the way I would think about it is if it was on the TV, would I have to turn the channel over to watch it, which I do with some things, like Strictly Ballroom or Clueless. I pretty much have to watch those if those come up. Or Princess Bride. And I think I would. So I'd say this scores 4.7.
It's decent.
That's very decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is decent.
Mr. Crosby.
I'm going to go 4.6. I watched it. I was slightly clock watching because I was watching it on a time. I wanted to watch Call the Midwife. So and I'd mistimed it by I think I watched the last 7. I watched everything but the last 7 minutes, then watch Call the Midwife, then watch the last 7 minutes. Which, by the way, I don't recommend that particular mashup.
Okay, a lot of blood.
It's like too much blood. A lot of like no crying for about 70 minutes, then loads of crying for an hour, then no crying for another sort of 15 minutes.
Start female characters and then no female characters.
Suddenly too many female characters. Come on. But no, so I if that had not been the situation, I would have happily watched it all the way through. And it nips by, and there's new stuff happening all the time. Like it's episodic and sketchy, which is great for just kind of keeping your interest. It's full of new little stars.
Yeah.
So 4.7.
4.7. Helen?
I think I'm going to give it a 5. I mean, it's so short that even watching it again, it just flew by. And, I didn't feel the need to check the phone. And I'd done all like my, when you get into the IMDb train of, I'd already done that after watching it the first time. So I didn't feel the need to go, oh, that guy was in this and that was in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just so short that it, had my attention again. And I do really want to see it again now after we've seen it.
Engagement score, yeah, I think I'm going to go 4.7. You guys as well. Let's make it 4.7 across the board.
Isn't it?
I think we really get along.
Yeah, look at that. So we got an overall score of 4.7, which is amazing.
That's very good.
Yeah.
That's really good. It's a very good film.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased I watched it. It's one of those things I don't know why it passed me by. I saw the trailer. I remember sitting in Brixton Ritzy, seeing the trailer for it and thinking, yeah, I'll definitely see that. And then just it happens sometimes where it just passes you by.
Yeah.
Do you do when on Netflix, do you give like ratings after a film? Now, I have a terrible thing in that I've been up to the Edinburgh Festival so many years, and you get reviewed in stars for your Edinburgh shows. I never give lower than 4 stars. If I hate a movie, I might give it 3 stars. If I absolutely hate it, but I can't bring my. I'm punishing
Netflix,
myself.
though.
I'm punishing myself. Occasionally, I won't review a film, but if I watch it, they still see you've watched it all the way through to the end. But I'm punishing myself. But I can't. This is a thing that didn't exist. So this is a thing that didn't exist until a load of people pulled together and made it happen. I've got a very romantic.
Till Adam Sandler got out of his armchair and he's like, you know what? Let's do this.
Let's do this entire movie. I'm not going to write a script. But yeah, so I'm very bad for like. I mean, I just think
your recommendations must be absolute dog shit.
They're all over the place.
You're too kind.
I'm too kind.
Yeah.
I'm too generous.
Yeah.
I've got too big a heart, Helen. That's the problem.
Giving away those stars. Here, have some stars.
Giving away those stars. Yeah, they're stars. They're not love. Anyway,
So I think 4.7 is
strong.
I can't.
Very strong.
It's going to be it's going to be an interesting film that beats that. I think. So I think we should finish there.
Yes.
On a positive.
Yeah.
Vampiric note.
And if you guys can sound us off to who you are again and where we can find you, of course, we'll link to you guys in the show notes.
Thank you.
That's a fantastic question to end on. Who are you again?
What's your name? Man, person, over there.
I tell you what, should we do each other?
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so sitting next to me right now is the podcaster and broadcaster, Helen Zaltzman. She is my former flatmate. You can hear her podcasts on the Radiotopia network. Is that right?
Sure.
You
can look it up on the internet. People know how the internet works now.
So go to http:// No. So if you search for The Allusionist or Answer Me This, they're two of my absolute favourite podcasts. I've fallen away from so many podcasts over the years. We all do. But I've stayed constant, like the Northern Star, to those two podcasts. I absolutely adore it. I absolutely adore them both.
And Matthew Crosby here is part of Pappy's, the sketch troupe who also do the 2 podcasts, Pappy's Flatshare Slamdown, which I've been on.
You have been on twice.
Replicating our real-life Flatshare slamming down, and Pappy's Bangers and Mash, which is sketches. And he's also a comedian, so you can see him live. Where can people see you live? Have you got MatthewCrosby.com?
You're not going to believe this. This is a bit of a coup.
Not .info.
I've got MatthewCrosby.tumblr.com.
Whoa, how much do you pay for that?
That is a coup, isn't it?
Yeah, all my sweet podcasting money. That's where it's going, guys.
Getting the cool URLs.
Free templates.
I went for a .org because I thought they're classy.
Yeah, they really are classy. And also, not for profit.
Not anymore. They
Exactly,
just
yeah.
buy one. 20 quid because the .com was $5,000.
No.
Yep.
Guys, yes, thanks a lot, guys, for talking about what we do in the shadows.
What a
Been an
pleasure.
absolute pleasure, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. And of course, we want to big up Tony and Jay and also Greg, our editors from GL Productions. Of course, please big up Mighty People for the tunes you can hear now. And at the start of the podcast, Find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod and visit our website, flixwatcher.tv.